Hello and welcome. You're watching DD India Live. I'm Gautam Roy. Coming up in the next 30 minutes. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu defers the release of Palestinian prisoners in exchange for 3 Israeli hostages freed earlier. At least 28 bodies have been recovered so far after a US Army chopper collides with a passenger plane over frozen Potomac River in Washington, D.C. President Trump says the tragedy could have been prevented. And India's IT Minister Ashwini Vaishnav says the nation will have its own AI foundational model like ChatGPT and DeepSeek in another 10 months. Also, India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar says India's foreign policy would continue to be guided by national interest. He also highlights strong India-US bilateral ties. First up, the Hamas handed over 3 Israelis and 5 Thai hostages in Gaza on Thursday, but Israel then delayed the expected release of Palestinian prisoners after chaotic scenes at one of the handover points, where large crowds swarmed around the captives. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said the sight of their handover amid the swarming crowds was shocking and threatened death to anyone hurting the hostages. He urged mediators to ensure the scene would not be repeated. A total of 110 Palestinian prisoners were expected to be freed on Thursday as part of the phased agreement that halted fighting in Gaza. An Israeli official involved in the operation said buses carrying the detainees had been instructed to return to prison in an apparent response to the chaotic handover. And U.S. Middle East envoy Steve Witkoff has met with Benjamin Netanyahu on Wednesday amid the Gaza ceasefire and a regional diplomatic push. The meeting comes before Netanyahu's visit to Washington, D.C. next week. The Israeli PM is the first foreign leader to be invited to the White House by U.S. President Donald Trump during his second term. Earlier, Witkoff visited Gaza on Wednesday. The U.S. Special Envoy to the Middle East is in the region to oversee the implementation of the ceasefire. Now, an American Airlines flight collided in midair with a helicopter in Washington, D.C. on Thursday, with both crashing into the frozen Potomac River. The jet, which was coming from Wichita, Kansas, was carrying 60 passengers and 4 crew members, and 3 U.S. Army soldiers were on board the military helicopter. About 300 emergency responders were put into rescue mode, with police divers and boats searching the water for survivors in windy, dark conditions. According to media reports, so far 28 bodies have been recovered, but there is no official update on casualties. In fact, rescue operations have now shifted to recovery mode as no further survivors are expected to be found. Meanwhile, the Federal Aviation Administration has ordered the grounding of all planes at Reagan National Airport. And U.S. President Donald Trump has said in an official statement that he had been briefed on the terrible accident and thanked emergency responders for their incredible work. In a social media post, he said, and I quote, "The airplane was on a perfect and routine line of approach to the airport. The helicopter was going straight at the airplane for an extended period of time. It's a clear night. The lights on the plane were blazing. Why didn't the helicopter go up or down or turn? Why didn't the control tower tell the helicopter what to do instead of asking if they saw the plane? This is a bad situation that looks like it should have been prevented, not good." And terming the incident as absolutely tragic, U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth said the research and rescue efforts have been ongoing and an investigation has been launched immediately by the Army and Defense Department. And the chief executive of American Airlines has expressed grief over the Washington, D.C. crash.
I'd like to express our deep sorrow about these events. This is a difficult day for all of us at American Airlines, and our efforts now are focused entirely on the needs of our passengers, crew members, partners, first responders, along with their families and loved ones.
The Democratic Republic of Congo is plunged into chaos as President Felix Tshisekedi has slammed the international community's inaction on the escalating conflict in the eastern region. More in this report.
Democratic Republic of Congo President Felix Tshisekedi has slammed the international community's inaction on the escalating conflict in the eastern region, calling it a betrayal of the country. The conflict, fueled by alleged Rwanda-backed rebels, has ignited public outrage in Kinshasa, with protesters targeting foreign embassies. Tshisekedi warned of regional destabilization. While the international community has denounced the embassy attacks, Tshisekedi's plea for intervention remains ignored, leaving the region on edge. While an East African bloc urged an immediate ceasefire in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo, M23 rebels who seized the city of Goma extended their advance on Wednesday. Congo said it planned a campaign to recover lost territory. DRC President Tshisekedi has vowed a robust military response.
Face à cette situation,
In the face of this situation, let me reassure you that a vigorous, coordinated response against these terrorists and their sponsors is underway. Our valiant armed forces of the Democratic Republic of Congo, symbols of courage and patriotism, are fully mobilized, ready to defend each inch of our territory.
pleinement mobilisés.
The conflict is largely driven by the region's vast mineral wealth, including cobalt, gold, and coltan. The eastern DRC is home to some of the world's richest mineral deposits, making it a coveted prize for armed groups and external powers. Meanwhile, nearly 300 foreign mercenaries hired by the DRC government surrendered to UN peacekeeping troops in Goma Wednesday night. The M23 armed group, allegedly backed by Rwanda, has seized 2 districts in South Kivu, eastern DRC, after capturing Goma in North Kivu. The advances have killed at least 17 people and have injured around 370, worsening the region's humanitarian crisis. Antara Sinha for DD India.
And back home, while interacting with students in New Delhi, India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar spoke about Indo-US bilateral relations while emphasizing that the changes brought by US President Donald Trump will benefit both the countries in the long run. He also asserted that India's foreign policy would continue to be guided by national interest.
Our issue today is we have, our relations with America are good. Modi ji's personal relations with Trump is good. When I look, what are their policies, there is nothing which is country to country negative about us. So I am quite confident that yes, he will change many things. But even interest-wise, I feel that, there may be some few issues where we may think a little bit differently, but in many areas there will be, at a country to country, there is a lot which is in our shared interest.
India's Minister for Electronics and Information Technology, Ashwini Vaishnav, has said that India will have its own AI foundational model like ChatGPT and DeepSeek up and running in another 10 months tops. Addressing the media in New Delhi, Vaishnav said that the major pillar of the AI mission is to provide a series of applications for the people and benefit them.
We have created the framework which will be launched today. We are calling for proposals to develop our own foundational model where the Indian context, the Indian languages, the culture of our country, where the biases can be removed, where the data set is basically for our country, of our country, for our citizens. That process will start today. And we believe that there are at least 6 major developers who will be able to create foundational models in the next 8 to 10 months on the outer limit.
Now, Meta has agreed to pay US President Donald Trump $25 million to settle a 2021 lawsuit he filed claiming he was wrongfully censored by Facebook and Instagram after the US Capitol riot. This is seen as a victory for Donald Trump, as $22 million of the payment will go towards funding his future presidential library. The remainder will cover legal fees and payments to other plaintiffs in the case. Meta in the settlement will not admit wrongdoing over the suspensions of Trump's accounts. Trump had widely criticized social media platforms for suspending his accounts after the 6th of January 2021 insurrection. Mark Zuckerberg has expressed support for Donald Trump much later, around the time that the elections were happening in the US in 2024, and he has tweaked Meta's policies to lift restrictions on some content within the company's apps, which include Facebook, Instagram, Threads and WhatsApp. In December, ABC News agreed to pay $15 million in a settlement payment to resolve a defamation lawsuit brought by Trump, stemming from on-air comments about him made by a top anchor. Meanwhile, Meta Platforms forecast first quarter revenue below Wall Street estimates, signaling its bets on pricey artificial intelligence-powered tools were struggling to attract additional digital ad dollars to its social media platforms. The company expected quarterly revenue between $39.5 to $41.8 billion US, compared with the analyst's average estimate of $41.72 billion USD. And still to come on DD India Live. With India's annual budget coming up on Saturday, we'll get to what the people of Jammu and Kashmir expect from the Finance Minister. And contractions in France and Germany have slowed down Eurozone's economic growth in the fourth quarter.
रिटायरमेंट प्लानिंग के लिए तेरा एसआईपी के बारे में क्या ख्याल है?
रिटायरमेंट अभी तो पूरी लाइफ बाकी है यार।
और तुझे नहीं लगता अगर रिटायरमेंट के बारे में अभी से नहीं सोचे तो आगे जाके प्रॉब्लम होगी?
पर रिटायरमेंट के बारे में सोचना क्यों है इतना जरूरी? जब तक आप रिटायर हो जाएंगे महंगाई काफी ज्यादा बढ़ जाएगी और आपकी इनकम वो तो रुक ही जाएगी। इसीलिए आज ही म्यूचुअल फंड्स में एसआईपी शुरू कीजिए और हर महीने थोड़ा
विकसित भारत स्ट्रैटेजी। The same was reiterated by Prime Minister Narendra Modi on January 13, when he said that the dream of a developed India will be realized when its crown, Kashmir, is adorned with the jewels of progress. The Union Territory, which elected a new government in October last year, has petitioned the central government for more central funds to accelerate projects linked to agriculture, tourism and industry.
We have seen in the last 5-6 years a lot of development as far as infrastructure development has been done in Jammu and Kashmir, especially in Kashmir and in the rural and urban areas as well. So we are expecting that more and more funds are to be allocated for the infrastructure development.
Union Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman has already held a pre-budget consultation with Jammu and Kashmir Chief Minister Omar Abdullah earlier this month.
We expect a massive package from the Union Finance Minister, so that our economy grows and our infrastructure gets developed.
The Jammu and Kashmir budget for 2024-25 included 42,278 crore rupees as central assistance and 12,502 crore rupees as centrally funded scheme and Pradhan Mantri Development Package to the Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir.
We hope that this budget have a good impact on a common man's life. Tourism is the backbone of this state and elsewhere India, because tourism is the second largest industry which we are getting finance and we are getting revenues from all over the India.
The hopes and expectations are high and the demands too are realistic. So the Jammu and Kashmir will definitely like to get more incentives and funds from the Union government to accelerate its growth momentum. With cameraman Arshid, this is Shabbir Dar for DD India in Srinagar.
Now, Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman is set to unveil the Union Budget 2025 this week on the 1st of February. Like always, this event will be keenly watched. The Indian economy faces challenges in the first half of FY25 amid lower capital expenditure, but this trend is expected to recover in the second half of FY25.
Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman is set to unveil the Union Budget 2025 this week on February 1st. Industry experts believe the government should project a 10% growth in capex for financial year 26.
We are very sure that government will definitely prioritize infrastructure development, which we have seen in past many years during the Modi government. There has been a tremendous focus on infrastructure development. We expect that there will be at least 15% more capex for the infrastructure development in the country, as we have already seen that 1 rupee spent in infrastructure brings a growth of 3 rupee to the nation.
The agriculture sector is hopeful for reforms addressing crop pricing stability through advanced minimum support price (MSP) mechanisms. The taxation industry expects the Indian government to further simplify tax norms and ease compliance.
Reduce the rate of income tax on personal income tax rates for income up to 50 lakhs to 25% as against 30% right now. We also suggested that the rate of surcharge for income above 50 lakhs should also be reduced. Our next point was to increase the depreciation on electric vehicles so that the sale of electric vehicles is promoted to reduce pollution. We also suggested that the new income tax law should be more simplified from the existing one.
The healthcare industry wants increased government support to address critical challenges in the sector.
Health budget should be priority, and it should not be in any case less than 3% of GDP, so that we can serve common man even in the villages. Though I appreciate Ayushman Bharat is doing very well, same time nation need more budget for the healthcare facilities.
From the budget of 2025, we would expect to focus on improving health access, affordability, quality, and especially long-term infrastructure improvements.
These expectations reflect a cross-sectoral hope for progressive measures in budget of 2025-26 and will drive sustainable growth, enhance productivity and improve overall quality of life. Anil Thomas's report for DD India, New Delhi.
Economic growth in the Eurozone has slowed to a halt in the fourth quarter, dragged by contractions in major economies France and Germany. According to preliminary data, Eurozone gross domestic product remained unchanged from the previous quarter, a sharp slowdown from the 0.4% growth recorded in the third quarter and below the 0.1% expansion forecast by analysts. Now, the EU has finally unveiled a business-friendly plan after many complaints and queries from companies there. The EU Commission has a roadmap that will revamp the economic model and make it easier for businesses to thrive there. There's also talk of reducing dependency and strengthening the industries at home. For more on this, we're joined by DW's Wada Imran from Berlin. Good evening to you, Wada, from Delhi. And what is this roadmap all about?
Thanks for having me. This roadmap, also called the Competitive Compass, is meant to be a sort of relief for companies here in Europe that have been subjected to tight controls and regulations in the last few years. There was a very heavy focus on green goals and stricter supply chain rules that had stunted the growth of many businesses. Now, this roadmap wants to loosen up some of these rules. This new EU plan wants to revise dozens of laws, let's say in the supply chain category, the corporate sustainability category, and chemical safety. There is clear acknowledgement that Europe has not been able to keep pace with the other major economies because of a gaping hole in productivity growth. One part of this roadmap is to encourage innovation, again, especially in AI, robotics, space technologies. I think this is also a kind of a wake-up call response because Europe has had very little innovation in the digital sector recently. Another part of this plan is to increase decarbonization and competitiveness, which I think sounds excellent on paper, but will perhaps prove to be hard when put to practice.
All right. And while the EU is committed to radically reducing its emissions as well, so how does this roadmap address climate goals?
Well, I think that's tricky, and this, I think, sits at the heart of the proposal. There are ways in which this roadmap will endanger or delay green goals, and there have already been complaints about this, for example, from the Friends of Earth Europe group. They say that this initiative will, quote, dismantle essential safeguards for EU citizens, the environment, and the climate. However, the proposal and the EU remain strictly committed to earlier established goals. As part of this deal, there is also a clean industrial deal that's aimed to prioritize both industrial growth and doing it with low emissions, with a focus on clean tech and circular business models. It is an ambitious plan which would genuinely boost business confidence here in Europe.
All right, Wada Imran, thank you so much for joining us from Berlin. Now, Uttarakhand's basketball team praised the state's infrastructure and facilities during the National Games. In an exclusive chat with DD India's Narayan Singh, they shared insights on Uttarakhand's new sporting journey.
The 38th edition of the National Games are underway in Uttarakhand, and right now I am in Dehradun at the basketball arena where the players for Uttarakhand are joining me. I have 3 players with me from the Uttarakhand team. So, what was your experience here at the 38th edition of the National Games as Uttarakhand is hosting these games for the first time?
So, my experience is pretty good. दूसरे states से players आ रहे हैं और sports have no boundaries like, so बहुत कुछ सीखने के लिए मिल रहा है. So, I have a pretty good experience over here.
Talking about the overall, we can say that the infrastructure that the Uttarakhand government, with the help of the central government, that they raised here. Here we are at the basketball arena, world-class basketball arena is visible. So, what's your opinion on the infrastructure raised by the government?
Well, experience has been wonderful, and I mentioned, this is something we are not used to digital shot clocks, that too going on top of the board. So this is something buzzer going off, and none of the matches are being interrupted, even though 2 consecutive matches are going on. Refereeing has been spectacular, and the courts itself, we didn't feel the jolt you feel when you're playing in concrete courts. So this was something playing on a wooden court and giving your heart out was something which was natural to us. So it was fun. It was a once in a lifetime experience, and we had a whole lot of fun.
Talking about the exposure and the competitiveness, international players too are here. So how you look this opportunity, how you look to grab this opportunity to play here at the National Games?
There are a lot of international players who are participating in DC Championship. Vishesh Bhiguvanshi and Prince Palpreet, and a lot of international players are playing against us also today in Karnataka team. We are getting a very good competition here because they are only top 8 team of India. Those are qualified for National Games Uttarakhand.
Basketball players are also here, and world-class infrastructure has been stood here in Dehradun to conduct the 38th edition of the National Games, and we are hoping this has ignited a new ray of hope in the people of Uttarakhand, and the young generation, the young players will definitely get inspired by this thing. With camera person Uttam, Narayan Singh, DD India, Dehradun.
And that's all we have in this edition of DD India Live, but let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. And for those on the go, you can get all the latest news and updates from India and across the world on DD India's mobile app. It's available on both Android and iOS. You can scan the QR code on the screen and download the app right away. And we'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Gautam Roy, and from all of us here in Delhi, thanks for watching DD India Live.